Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here on this admin chat telling you all about stress resilience. And just to let you know who and what I am, I'm a psychologist, I'm a coach, a personal and executive coach, and a development trainer. And more of my time now is being spent on development training, which I do on webinars. And what I'm going to tell you today about stress resilience is a part of that training. And of course, I share it with others on my one-to-one work as well and in my coaching work. But most people are finding out about what I'm going to tell you on webinars now on the internet. So, stress, goodness me, we all know what stress is and what it feels like, although I think it's about 30 years since I've ever experienced it, so I know quite a lot about how to avoid being stressed. And I guess, I don't know, you can get stressed at work, can't you, by feeling overloaded. Maybe your boss is putting pressure on you or giving you more work than you can handle, or maybe you've got more than one boss, as many executive assistants do these days, and they both think you're fully employed by them. And once again, you can easily get overloaded, stressed. And maybe you experience stress at home from time to time, relationships with family or other people, or finances, or any of the other things that can stress us in our lives. Now, I want to tell you something about stress that a lot of people don't think about and don't realize. That we can only ever feel stressed if we're in resistance. And what do we mean by being in resistance? We mean either having negative thoughts about things, negative thoughts about what's going on, which would potentially drive stress, or just wanting things to be different, And if those two definitions of resistance, by the way, having negative thoughts or wanting something to be different is actually the same definition, because every time we have a negative thought about anything, we're wanting something to be different. We could be having negative thoughts about something that's happened. We don't want it to happen. We can have negative thoughts about a current situation, which maybe is mostly what's driving stress. That's because we don't want that situation to be what it is. Or we can have negative thoughts about the future. We call that worry, don't we? And that is because we don't want the future to be what we think it might be, and that's the definition of worry. So stress is generally driven by negative thoughts or wanting things to be different. And I'm going to tell you that resistance is always irrational in one way or the other. Resistance is always involves wishing for the impossible. Resistance always involves thoughts that just don't make sense in one way or another. So let's say we're resisting things that have happened. That means we don't want them to have happened. Well, clearly that's not very rational, because there's nothing you can do, is there, about changing what's already happened. So wanting the past to be different, that doesn't make sense, because it's impossible, wishing for the impossible. Say the same about the present, by the way. If we're stressed or having negative thoughts about something that's going on right now, some current situation, well, we're wanting that situation to be different in some way, and that's impossible too. It's not only is it too late to change the past, it's too late to change the present as well. Sure, we might be able to do something in the next moment in the future to change it, but resisting what is always wants what is not to be, and that's never possible, because what is right now is what it is right now, and if you're resisting it, you're wishing for the impossible. The only thing you can do is take action to change the next moment of the future. Resisting the future, why is that irrational? Well, we call that worry, don't we? But let me tell you, if we're worried about something and that's contributing to our stress, we're wanting something to be different in the future than the way we think it might be. That's what worry is. And critically, we don't believe we can control it. If we believe we can control it, and avoid it in some way, or make it the way we want it to be in some way, then we wouldn't be worrying, would we? We only ever worry about things we can't control. So I say, and we say, well, that's pretty much a nonsense too. That's just as silly as wanting the past to be different. Clearly, we have no control over the past. It's too late. And if we're wanting something to be different in the future that we don't have any control over, then that's about as silly as wanting the past to be different. what would be more sensible than wanting the future to be different in a way that we can't control? Basically, acknowledge that what will be, and be able to deal with that and cope with that. Okay, so what do you think the opposite of resistance is? If I've said resistance is always irrational and crazy, so I'm not telling you you're crazy. I'm just saying any resistant thoughts are always crazy for the reasons that I've just said, but wanting something to be different that can't be. And so what do you think the word we'd use for the opposite of resistance? Acceptance. Now, I'm using acceptance in a way that's different from maybe our usual meaning of the word in our culture. In our culture, we usually think acceptance means letting things be. So I don't know, if you had something crazy going on in your life and I just said, accept it. You probably think, oh, that's not very helpful advice, because you'd want to fix it, wouldn't you? You would want to do something about it. So no, that wouldn't be very clever. But my definition of acceptance is slightly different from letting things be. It's stop wishing things were different right now. Okay, so, and I've already explained to you why wanting things that have happened not to happen, or wanting the situation that exists right now to be different, or wanting the future to be different in a way we can't control, is always pretty silly, because we're wishing for the impossible. So I'm saying we need to replace resistance with accepting what was, accepting what is, and accepting what will be in aspects of our lives that we can't control. So developing the ability to accept those things is hugely, hugely valuable. I'm not going to go into details in this talk of all the things that I'm going to mention, because I just don't have time. But I am going to tell you where you can find those details, and how we train people to, for example, accept what is all the time, without exception. Accept what's happened, accept what is. In other words, stop wishing what isn't, and accept the future in aspects of our lives that we can't control. So I've got a very powerful way of teaching people how to do that all the time, and I'll tell you where you can find that. Okay, so by the way, there's two reasons why resisting the past and present don't make sense. I've given you one of them. Okay, it's too late to change the past, and it's too late to change the present moment, isn't it? We can only change the next moment of the future if we can, if we're able to. But let me give you another reason why wanting the past or present to be different is pretty crazy, apart from the fact that it's too late. And this will surprise you. I'm going to tell you something that I'm not going to spend much time on again, because I don't have time, but you'll have to take my word for it. I'm going to tell you about a piece of philosophy called determinism. You may never have heard the term determinism, and you may have no idea what it means, but I can tell you the philosophers do. And determinism is a huge piece of philosophy. And what determinism says is basically that the past and present could not possibly have been different. So in other words, not only is it too late to change either of them, but both of them were the only way they could have been, all the time, no exception. And let me tell you why. It's incredibly simple, and I find it, once I learned about it, I thought, well, why didn't I figure that out for myself? And nobody ever does, by the way. So what I'm about to tell you, I've never met anyone who's figured it out for themselves. It's always passed on from philosopher to philosopher, or philosopher to people like me who's not a philosopher. But the reason that the past couldn't have been different is incredibly simple. And that is that everything we've ever done, not just we, but everyone, everything everyone's ever done was totally determined by only two things. The first of those two things were the situation we were in at the time. And the second of those things was who we were at the time. Who we are is made up of a whole bunch of things, okay? Made up of things like our beliefs, our attitudes, our knowledge, our abilities, our habitual ways of thinking, our strengths, our weaknesses, our morals, our values, our unconscious programming that's whirring away, driving all sorts of things. We sometimes call that our mindset. Philosophers call it our autopilot. So all those things are driving what we're thinking, feeling, and doing all the time in a particular situation that we might be in. And I can tell you all of those things that determined what we did at a particular moment, or we thought, felt, or did at a particular moment, were what they were at that moment. The situation was what it was. We were who we were. That's why we thought what we thought. That's why we felt what we felt. And that's why we did what we did. Never an exception. So that might surprise you. What determinism basically says is that the past couldn't possibly have been different because the past is made up of people doing things. And all of those people did the only things they could have done. That's true. That's true about what happened 5 seconds ago, and it's true about what happened 100 years ago. Oh, the only other thing, by the way, that's going on is nature. And it won't surprise you that nature is also totally determined. It does the only thing it knows how to do all the time. And people, us, are just part of nature in the way that I've described. You know, we're doing the only thing we know how to do at every single moment. Now, fortunately, in case you're feeling a bit depressed about the fact that I seem to be saying you have no control over your life because you're just automatically doing anything you know how to do all the time. Fortunately, philosophers don't apply this to the future. They only apply it to the past and the present. But that's amazing, isn't it? Because it says that if we're unhappy about the past or the present, well, it's too late to change it anyway. So the fact that you've now got an extra reason for accepting it, the fact that it couldn't have been different, is actually all a bonus. I mean, determinism gets rid of regret, gets rid of feeling guilty, gets rid of being upset, gets rid of bad people, gets rid of blaming ourselves or other people, gets rid of all sorts of negative thoughts about the past or the present. If you learn how to use it, by the way, which I've already told you I can teach you how to do, then you'll never be stressed. I can tell you, plus the other things I'm going to tell you about how not to be stressed, but what I've already told you about the 2 tools, if you like, to accept what's happened and accept what is, time-based tool, determinism-based tool. If you learn how to use those tools all the time, which I'm very happy to tell you how you can learn those things, then just that alone will pretty well remove almost all stress from your life. But I'm going to talk about other things as well. I've already told you, by the way, that philosophers talk about autopilot. That's the word they use for all our kind of automatic programming that's drives us all the time. They say, we call it mindset. We psychologists, that is, philosophers call it autopilot. And I can tell you, philosophers say that most people are on autopilot for their entire lives. In other words, they constantly do what their mind is telling them to do, and their mind is what it is all the time, and therefore they never get off autopilot. Fortunately, because I've already told you, the philosophers don't necessarily apply determinism to the future. They know how we can get off autopilot. And I'm not going to go through that right now, but except to tell you that what they're talking about is exercising something we call free will. So if you stick with me and after this, okay, Adminchat talk, I would tell you how you can find out how to exercise, how you can learn how to exercise free will, how you can get off your autopilot, how you can develop your mindset, and all sorts of things that are going to make you hugely more powerful, confident, and totally get rid of stress from your life. Let me give you an example, by the way, of an aspect of resilience, all right, which is what we're talking about, isn't it? Stress resilience. Think about robots. Think about how they think, how they're programmed to think, of course. Do you think robots are ever in resistance? Do you think they ever get upset about things? Do you think they ever want things to be different? Do you think they ever get stressed? No way. No way, because they're not programmed to, okay? But whereas we've got this programming in our mind that puts us in resistance at all sorts of times and creates stress in our lives. So, I don't know, there's been so many films and they're about robots often played by humans. I'm thinking of one example, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger in a movie called Terminator or Terminator 2. Have you ever seen that movie? You'll remember that Arnold Schwarzenegger never got stressed. He never had negative thoughts about anything. He never got upset. He was all the time totally 100% resilient, handling whatever happened and focusing only on action. And now none of us want to be robots, okay, fair enough. But nevertheless, that aspect of robots is something we should learn how to do, how to be massively resilient, how to never get upset about anything, how to never, well, unless we want to, okay, I'm not saying no, we must never be upset about anything, but if we don't want to be upset about something, I can tell you, I can teach you how to do that. So in other words, that particular aspect of your life, how to teach you how to be more like robots in terms of their resilience and their focus on action, which is, massively helpful for any human to be able to do those two things. Nevertheless, I would say there's other aspects of being a robot that we wouldn't want, like never experience feelings or emotions, or there are some benefits, by the way. They never get sick; they live forever. So I don't know. There's certain other aspects of being a robot that would be good to adopt, but no, we wouldn't want to be as cool, calm, and I don't know, never be upset about anything or never react to anything or whatever, which is what robots do. So, okay, so that's just an analogy for you, okay, as to what it means to be massively resilient and only ever focused on action. That's what I've been managing to do, by the way, for at least the last 20 years. Hugely resilient, only ever focused on action, never wanting things to be different, never being stressed about things. I was lucky that people told me how to achieve that many, many years ago. And I've passed it on now to tens of thousands of people. And I'm very happy to pass it on to you if you want to join me. Let me just see if I can pull up something actually while I'm talking. There you go. So I've got this little training. I'm going to tell you more about stress resilience, by the way, but I'll just put this up. This training, actually this particular training is focused on how to create a powerful mindset. And having a powerful mindset, it has all sorts of aspects to it. But basically, mindset is the word we use for all the unconscious stuff that's going on, that's driving our thoughts, feelings, and actions a huge amount of the time. Okay, we've got mindset is the unconscious stuff. We've got a conscious brain as well, in which making choices and so on. But I tell you what's operating mainly when we get stressed and when we're in resistance is the unconscious stuff. So if you want to write this down, this link, I'm going to invite you to it free, okay, not charge you a thing. And this webinar is 50 minutes, and more time than I've got today to talk about creating a powerful mindset. And come along and hear it. It will have a massive impact on your life, I promise you. And so write it down, key it when you've got some 50 minutes to spare, key it into your web browser, and or write it rather into your web browser, and watch that 50-minute webinar. It'll tell you how to create a powerful mindset. Okay, I hope I can. Let me see if I can get out of this. It'd be useful to show. Here I am. Okay. So now, what else can I tell you about never being stressed and being hugely stress resilient? Okay, so other people can make us stressed, can't they? At least that's what it appears, that other people are making us stressed. I'm going to tell you in a minute, no, other people never make us stressed. We make ourselves stressed in the way we react to what other people do. But I'll come back to that in a minute. But if it's your boss, okay, that's stressing you, or somebody else in your life that's stressing you, some problem, family problem at home or whatever, then let me tell you that two things about those people, okay, that you believe are stressing you. First of all, from what I've just told you, they're living a totally determined life. They're on autopilot. They don't know how to do anything different to what they're doing right now. You might think they do. You might think, no, this person shouldn't, my boss or whatever, shouldn't be piling work on me and expecting me. But I'm sorry, right now, that's the only way he knows how to think. He's on autopilot. He's just doing what his mind and patterns and unconscious and conscious thoughts are telling him to do. And you thinking that he should be doing something different is ignoring what I've just told you. That the past and present are determined, and your boss who's piling work or pressure on you is unquestionably doing the only thing he could possibly be doing right now. So what's possible then for you to do what's possible for you to do is change the way you're reacting to it. I've already given you some clues as to how to do that. Another way of putting this, by the way, is that whenever we're in a challenging or conflictual situation, everyone always thinks that they're right and reasonable. We always think we're right and reasonable if we're having negative thoughts about our boss or somebody else. But I'm sorry to tell you, but they think so too. They think they're right and reasonable. Everyone always thinks they're right and reasonable in any stressful or critical or conflictual situation. There's hardly ever an exception. Okay, somebody might be doing something where they know it's wrong and unreasonable, but they've nevertheless got some reason to be doing it. All right, the reason's there, so that's still driving them. So let me tell you this then: if everyone always thinks they're right and reasonable, is that possible? How can somebody else who's in conflict with us or we're in conflict with both be right and reasonable? Well, I can tell you, we both are. We're both right and reasonable, but only from our perspective. It's perspective that differs between people. Not that one person's unreasonable and the other person's reasonable. They just have different perspectives. So if your boss is piling work on you, his perspective is all about probably the stress or demands that he's under, the fact that he needs to get things done, the fact that he sees you as being there as his assistant to help him meet the targets or goals that he's got, completely forgetting that you've got 3 bosses and they're all putting pressure on you too. So he's got his perspective, and your perspective clearly is a perspective along the lines of just isn't fair. And now I'm feeling stressed. Oh my God! So 2 different perspectives. All right. So what's going to be helpful apart from just knowing what I've told you, that the other person's on autopilot and is doing anything he could be doing? He's driven by his perspective. And so what's useful, okay, rather than just reacting negatively to what other people are doing, is to just spend a few moments doing something that we humans practically never do. Spend a few moments focusing on the other person's perspective. See if you can figure out what it is. See if you can figure out why they're doing what they're doing. See if you can figure out what's driving them. And if you can figure that out, then, okay, you're now aware, clearly you're already aware of your perspective, that this is all unfair and stressful, but now you're aware of his or her perspective as well. And so now you've got a chance to create a conversation with him or her that takes account of both perspectives. You've got a chance of empathizing maybe with his or her perspective, explaining to him or her your perspective, and then when both parties are aware of not only their perspective but the other person's as well, now you've got a chance of achieving some kind of compromise. Or some kind of win-win solution, right? So rather than just sitting there and suffering, take action, 1, to understand their perspective, and 2, to communicate with the other person in productive and empathic ways that don't create conflict. And that's another useful tool to think about. Another thing I can mention to help in stressful situations is just to recognize, I think what I've effectively already told you, this is putting it another way, that when we're reacting to other people, we think they're the problem. We always do. But actually, they're not strictly the problem. I've explained to you a couple of reasons for that. 1, they're on autopilot. 2, they're just acting in accordance with their perspective. But one thing we can say, if we're reacting, that they are not strictly responsible for our reactions. If we're getting upset, stressed, and so on, that actually is all about us. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel stressed and you're a bad person for feeling stressed. No, not at all. I'm just saying that it's really helpful to understand that our reactions and what we think and what we respond are all about us. And that puts us a little bit more in control, rather than thinking, no, it's all about them, that crazy person who's stressing me. No, they're just doing what they're doing. We're stressing ourselves. And I've given you some clues already as to what we can do about that and how we can unstress ourselves by changing the way we think and changing and owning the way we're reacting. In other words, recognizing that's actually about us, not them, and trying to get it under control. And remember, I've talked about acceptance already, haven't I? Acceptance of the past, acceptance of the present. Too late to change them, only thing they could have been. Also, another really useful tool when we're stressed is to accept our feelings. Okay, stress is mainly about feelings. Okay, there's certainly some negative thoughts going on, but stress is primarily, the prime feature of stress is some form of anxiety. And that's a feeling. Okay, that's not a thought. There'll be negative thoughts driving it. Excuse me. But stress is mainly about feeling anxious. And the best thing to do with feelings, well, there's two things we can do about feelings, but the prime one that I teach is accepting them. Being willing to feel what we're feeling is always helpful, because resisting feelings, wanting not to be feeling what we're feeling is usually not helpful, because we don't have that much control, okay, of our feelings, and much less control than we do of our thoughts, and certainly of our behavior. We've got lots of control of our behavior, less control over our thoughts, and much less control over our feelings. So accepting feelings is really a helpful thing to do. I can tell you a couple of things about feelings. You've never been harmed by one. All feelings are harmless, and they're mostly bearable. So just remind yourself of those two things about any feeling you're experiencing, and be willing for it to be there. That's a good start. Now, once you've accepted a feeling and you're in a calmer state about what you're feeling, okay, you're still feeling it, then you've got a greater chance of doing the second thing that you can do with feelings, which is simply to let them go. That's not as easy as accepting them. Accepting them is easier, because it's particularly rational, okay, to say, what I'm feeling. Not wanting to feel what I'm feeling is probably going to make me feel worse, so I'm just going to remind myself it's harmless, it's bearable, so I'm happy to let it be there. But now you might want to try the second thing to do with feelings, which is to simply let them go. And can we do that? Yes, we can. You need to try that, practice it, let them go, and you'll feel better. Okay? You might still have too much work, you might still be under pressure, but if you can get rid of the anxiety, then that's good. Prime tool, acceptance. Secondary tool, if you can manage it, is letting feelings go. All right, so I'm coming to the end of this talk, because I've introduced some ideas to you. I'm not going to go and talk a lot more about them. I'm going to encourage you to, if you haven't already written it down, this is a 50-minute talk, totally free to you guys, free to executive assistants, not free to everyone, but it's certainly free to you. So I'm going to encourage you to watch it. 50 minutes out of your life. I hope that's not going to add to your stress and time pressures, but do watch it. It's incredibly powerful, and it will tell you how to get control over your mindset. Everything I've talked about, by the way, in this little talk is about mindset. And we need to know, or we should know, how to get control over that mindset, and how to build a more powerful mindset. Okay, you may know mindset is, I remind you, is the word we psychologists use for all the unconscious programming that's driving us all the time. Other people use it for some of the conscious stuff as well. But either way, mindset drives our lives. It is incredibly important. And so it makes sense. Well, it probably makes sense to you, doesn't it? That people who have a powerful mindset, I don't know, the Richard Bransons of this world or whoever, are more resilient, they're more powerful, they're more achieving, they're more in control of their lives. Okay, so people with powerful mindsets tend to have all those attributes. Excuse me. People with limiting mindsets will tend to get more stressed, more unhappy, more not in control, more all of those things. So you really, really should learn how to create a powerful mindset. And that's what this 50-minute webinar will teach you. So do join me. If you want to stay with me for some other webinars, I'll tell you a great deal more about the things that I've mentioned today, how to exercise free will, that kind of thing, and a lot more power tools to make you more confident, more powerful, more in control of your life. So, but just watch this webinar. At the end of the webinar, it'll tell you a bit more about other webinars that you can also see for free, no money at all, for executive assistants. Not true for everyone, but for you guys, happy to give you the whole training free. It's about 6 webinars of about 50 minutes each. not all at once, spread over several weeks. So it's something that's really, really worthwhile for you to see. But you'll be able to make up your mind just watching the first one. So if you haven't written down this link, write it down now, because I'm about to end this little talk. So that's I'll show you. I'm going to close this chart. So if you haven't written it down, good sake, do. I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. Then I'm going to close this chart, and then I'm going to sign off this admin chat. Here we go. It's going. So that's all I'm going to tell you in this chat. I've got a lot more to tell you in that webinar and other free webinars that I should offer you when you watch that webinar. So good luck with what I've told you already. Remember what I said. I haven't experienced stress for nearly 30 years. And everything I teach you in this training is the reason I never do. So do join me. And it's been fine talking to you. And I look forward to you joining me on that webinar. So that's it. That's goodbye from me for now. Goodbye.